The Homeless Man Who Saved a Billionaire's Daughter. Chapter 9, The Ultimate Rescue. The rain had turned into a relentless, freezing sleet that blanketed Pier 42 along the desolate edges of the Brooklyn waterfront. Abandoned shipping containers rusted under the flicker of yellow industrial floodlights, creating a maze of corrugated steel and deep shadows. At the far end of the pier stood an expansive, derelict naval warehouse jutting out over the churning dark waters of the East River. Inside the cavernous structure, 3 blacked-out SUVs formed a wide perimeter around a metal chair bolt secured to the concrete floor. Bound to the chair by heavy nylon restraints sat Aria Sterling. Her face was pale and her auburn hair damp with sleet, but her chin was held high, her eyes burning with fierce defiance despite the tactical mercenary team standing guard around her. 10 paces away stood Julian Carter, draped in a long cashmere coat, holding an encrypted satellite tablet showing live police scanner feeds. A cruel, triumphant smile rested on his lips. "Your father's stock is plummeting as we speak, Aria," Julian remarked smoothly, taking a slow sip from a stainless steel flask. "The media believes Commander Vance went rogue, murdered your guards, and abducted you. By morning, Sterling Global will be forced into receivership, and Carter Industries will step in as the benevolent savior to acquire your defense patents for pennies." Aria looked him dead in the eye, her voice icy and steady. "Ethan is coming for you, Julian. And when he gets here, there isn't a single place on this earth you'll be able to hide." Julian burst into a loud, mocking laugh that echoed off the rusted iron rafters overhead. "Ethan Vance is a relic, my dear. A broken vagrant who got lucky in an alleyway. Tonight, I have 12 heavy contractors from Aegis Security equipped with thermal optics, perimeter sensors, and high-caliber firepower. He is walking straight into a slaughterhouse." Suddenly, the warehouse's main power generator whined sharply before dying completely. The brilliant floodlights sizzled and snapped off, plunging the massive warehouse into absolute pitch-black darkness. "What was that?" Julian barked, his smile instantly vanishing. "Check the breaker panel." "Boss, perimeter motion sensor 4 just went dark," a mercenary shouted over the internal comms channel. "Sensor 2 is down. We're losing external feeds." From high above in the darkness of the rafters came a sharp, metallic clang, followed immediately by the dull, wet sound of a heavy body hitting the concrete floor. "He's inside!" a contractor screamed, swinging his rifle toward the ceiling. "Open fire!" Muzzle flashes strobed through the pitch black like blinding lightning bolts as automatic gunfire tore through the empty steel beams overhead. Sparks rained down, but no body fell. In the brief flashes of light, Ethan Vance emerged from the shadows behind the nearest SUV. He moved with a terrifying, predator-like efficiency that defied human speed. Ethan drove a combat knife cleanly through the tactical vest of the first mercenary, disarming his rifle with his free hand, and using the falling body as a human shield as 3 other contractors opened fire. The roar of unsuppressed gunfire was deafening inside the enclosed steel structure. Ethan spun around the vehicle, firing controlled 2-round bursts from his sidearm that dropped 2 more mercenaries instantly into the dark. "Cover the girl!" Julian shrieked, backing away toward the rear exit dock where an escape speedboat was idling in the water. "Kill him! Kill him now!" A heavy mercenary armed with a high-powered shotgun rounded the front bumper of the SUV, leveling the barrel at Ethan's chest. Ethan didn't flinch. He grabbed the hot barrel of the shotgun, forcing it skyward as it detonated, blowing a hole through the metal roof. Ethan stepped inside the man's guard, driving a brutal elbow strike across his jaw before slamming his head against the reinforced frame of the truck, knocking him cold. Sparks rained down as Ethan hurled a flare into the central space. The brilliant red light illuminated the remaining 4 mercenaries positioned around Aria. Ethan stepped into the crimson glow. His black coat was torn, his knuckles bloody, and his face splattered with mud and rain. But his ice-blue eyes held a terrifying, unyielding calm that paralyzed the remaining guards with pure instinctual fear. They weren't fighting a man. They were fighting a phantom that had crawled out of a grave built 7 years ago. Ethan fired 3 precise shots, neutralizing the remaining guards before they could raise their weapons. The final contractor dropped his rifle, raising his hands in utter panic, backing away into the shadows until Ethan dropped him with a single swift strike to the neck. Silence fell over the warehouse once again, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the idling boat engine outside and the sound of sleet beating against the iron roof. Aria let out a gasping breath as Ethan approached her, drawing his combat knife to slice through her heavy nylon bindings in 2 quick motions. "Ethan!" Aria breathed, standing up on shaking legs and clutching his arm. "You came. I told you I'd keep you safe," Ethan said quietly, his voice a low, raspy rumble. "Vance!" a voice screamed from the rear dock. Ethan turned calmly. Julian Carter stood near the edge of the open loading bay door, the cold wind whipping through his silver hair. He was holding a high-caliber sidearm, his hands trembling violently as he pointed the barrel directly at Ethan's heart. Behind him, the dark waves of the East River churned against the wooden pilings. "It was my company!" Julian shrieked, his composure completely shattered. "You were just the coder, Ethan. I built Carter Industries. I made us gods. You had no right to come back." Ethan stepped in front of Aria, taking a slow, deliberate step toward Julian. He didn't draw his weapon. He didn't take cover. He just kept walking, his boots echoing heavy against the concrete floor. "You didn't build an empire, Julian," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the wind with absolute, chilling authority. "You built a cage out of lies and dead bodies. And tonight, the doors are locked. Stay back. I'll shoot you. I swear to God I'll put a bullet through your head." Julian screamed, squeezing the trigger in panic. Bang! The gunshot echoed wildly through the warehouse. The bullet grazed Ethan's shoulder, tearing through his leather jacket, but Ethan didn't even flinch. He closed the remaining distance in a fraction of a second, grabbing Julian's wrist with a grip of pure iron, twisting it until the handgun clattered harmlessly onto the wet planks. Ethan drove a crushing punch straight into Julian's ribs, dropping the billionaire to his knees. He grabbed Julian by the collar of his expensive coat, hauling him up until they were nose to nose at the very edge of the open loading dock. Julian looked into Ethan's cold blue eyes, seeing no mercy, no hesitation, only the long, dark shadow of Clara Vance staring back at him. "Please, Ethan!" Julian sobbed, his face white with absolute terror as he hovered over the freezing black water below. "Please. I'll give you everything. The patents, the money, the company. Just let me live." Ethan looked at the weeping, broken man he had once called a friend. For 7 years, Ethan had believed that destroying Julian would be the only thing that could set his soul free. But standing here now, holding the architect of his ruin over the edge, Ethan realized that Julian Carter was already dead, a hollow shell consumed by his own endless greed. Sirens wailed in the distance, dozens of NYPD tactical units, federal sedans, and Victor Sterling's private security detail coming down the pier, their red and blue lights reflecting off the wet warehouse walls. Ethan dragged Julian back from the ledge, slamming him face first onto the cold concrete floor, pinning his wrist behind his back as heavy tactical police officers burst through the doors with flashlights and raised rifles. "Julian Carter," Ethan whispered coldly into his ear, snapping a set of heavy steel handcuffs around his wrists. "You're under arrest for treason, murder, and high-level extortion." Julian wept bitterly into the dust as federal agents rushed forward to secure him. Ethan stood up slowly, taking a deep, steady breath of the cold air. He turned around to see Aria standing a few feet away, illuminated by the flashing red and blue lights of the arriving police fleet. She didn't look at the police, the arrested mercenaries, or the media vans pulling up outside. She looked only at Ethan. She walked straight to him, ignoring the shouting officers, and threw her arms around his broad chest, burying her face into his coat. Ethan hesitated for a brief second, his calloused hands hovering in the air, before slowly wrapping his arms around her, holding her tightly against the cold wind. The ghost had finally finished his mission.